Hi guys, welcome to the final lecture of the course. In this lecture, we're going to do a quick review, and then we're going to talk about the market, the technologies, and then the prospects of all this. So where is all this headed? So this is what we're going to cover. So let's just kind of do a quick review here of what we've covered in this course. So the first lecture, if you recall, was kind of setting up, what the goals of the course were. Plus this kind of crash course in using PyCharm and just kind of getting it set up on some basic learning problems. The second lecture then, we very, very quickly went right to transformers and the use of this turtle GPT. So we really were able to kind of go down into like just fundamentally, how do we train up, how do we do this pre-training over a very simple example, but it's kind of nice to kind of delve into that. Then we talked about some of the formal details, some of the more mathematical details that lie, that are kind of the basis of this machine learning, this deep learning and transformer learning world. Then we went into GPT. So more generally, these papers, GPT papers, and then supervised fine tuning. Then we went into reinforcement learning and reasoning. And then we finally we touched on agents. So that was the first kind of the background. The first part of the course was this background material. So I thought that was a pretty good summary of kind of where things stand. And these are fairly well updated in terms of kind of what's going on currently. Then we went into vector databases and RAG. So that kind of use case, and then the text to SQL use case. And then finally, this kind of emerging area of agents actually getting deployed in businesses. So again, the second part of the course was a bit more practically minded, kind of how do we apply this stuff? So that's kind of what that was about. Then you had your recitations around this. The first recitation was again on the PyTorch stuff. Second was on this SFT and pre-training, and a little bit of reinforcement learning. Unfortunately, we didn't get. In the future versions of this course, I'm going to actually close this completely so that the reinforcement learning is not over a cat's world, but is over, in fact, over a pre-trained model. Okay. And then, of course, you had the RAG and the text to SQL, more practical recitation. The current recitation you have now is more around agents and some other issues. Okay, so let's talk about the market. So the first thing we want to do talk about the market is we want to kind of scope out who are the players, who are the participants in this market. So at the very top here, what we have is we have like kind of like the big boys here. We have the chip makers like NVIDIA. And there are more coming along, but NVIDIA they were very early to this, to GPUs. So they really were the one who benefited the most. So they have, if you look at all these revenue, these arrows represent revenue. So they have a lot of revenue coming in, right? So they've done really fantastically. And there's of course, there are, their suppliers also did really well. Some of the, the more like memories and chip makers, kind of more fundamental components. Then we of course have the hyperscaler. So we have a hyperscaler, which is kind of like those who have a big data center that can run these things. So AWS, Amazon Web Services, Azure, and Google Cloud. And then there's some other just kind of other ones we can mention. We can mention like some of the stuff that I guess now SpaceX is doing, like this Colossus. They own that. And then Oracle's involved pretty heavily in here, and there's a lot of other players in here. So they're basically building data centers and also building power generation. The whole issue of actually building a physical facility to support the compute. And of course, SpaceX is talking about trying to get this into space. Orbital data centers that are in low Earth orbit. That are powered by, or actually, I think they're in a different type of orbit. I can't remember, but they of course, they want to soak up as much sun as possible. But of course, the problem there is dissipating the heat. But again, there's a talk of like building very large fans to dissipate. So, but anyways, it's a technical question. And there's a lot of controversy, but I'll get to the controversy a little bit more later around this stuff, but just kind of specking it out. Now, We have also the model providers. So we have OpenAI, AI, and Anthropic are the big ones, and then we have a bunch of Chinese model providers. Um, uh, the the Chinese ones are a little bit special because, yeah. So there's the issue there is that, as far as I can tell, there's not that much support for actually just logging into these things and running free queries or having very cheap subscriptions to them. But if we just focus on OpenAI and Anthropic, and also Gemini, which is also Google's. So, and then the issue is that we have model providers that are just pure model provider plays, like OpenAI and Anthropic. And then we have some of them that span both hyperscaler and model provider, like Google and Gemini. And so we have to keep that in mind, that there's kind of these, the OpenAI and Anthropic are really kind of dependent. That's their business, is being a model provider with subscriptions. So, right. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind here then at the bottom here, let's try to move this to, we can see that. We have kind of at the you know, the kind of the base customers, right? We have government who might want to buy these kind of services. We have enterprises. So that's like anything that's like, those are usually like fairly large corporate entities. Like think a lot of the Wall Street firms, like Volvo, you know, just like these huge corporations. We have small and medium-sized enterprises. So these are enterprises. This is actually what I'm mostly interested in. Actually, is the SMEs. So these are usually, you know, your kind of mid-market company that's doing something for real, like yeah, I mean, could be restaurant, it could be lots of different. You know, this is very general. Then we have the micro enterprises. These are kind of like the 1 or 2 person shops. So these are like kind of really small. And then we have consumers. So people just kind of asking like questions about their health or questions about their finances or something to AI tools or to you know, this is also going all the way up into and asking questions over the like ChatGPT or OpenAI. I'm sorry, OpenAI or Anthropic, asking questions directly to them. So, these are all like supplying various levels of revenue. Enterprise and government probably are the big ones, but SMEs are pretty significant because there's so many of them. Micro enterprises, good luck. I think that generally there's not that much money in them. They're not. You know, they really are trying to keep their costs down, so it's not the best market to address. Consumer, of course. So in the middle here, then we have all of like the players that are kind of like trying to kind of give these customers services into this, into like the models, the kind of the application service, the application layer here. So a lot of the SaaS providers, like software as a service providers, they're kind of bundling in AI type services into their software. So that's like a big piece. There's a lot of AI consultants who are like maybe kind of like consulting with a small, medium-sized enterprise and trying to kind of help them get as much out of it as possible by making, you know, by setting up their systems to use the AI models. And then, of course, there are like a bunch of AI tool companies. So yeah, so that we have all these players in the middle here, and again, we see how the revenue moves in this model here. Okay, then we have kind of the investment. Who's putting money into these things? So we have the venture capitalist, the VC. We have private equity or private credit. So most of these are the ones who have the exposure. So who've like venture capital and it's a long story. It's a lot of attention is being paid to this lately. They're putting their money in, but then there's the issue of the public trying to get a piece of the investment opportunity, in quotes. Opportunity is also an opportunity to lose a lot of money. So yeah, so there's all this stuff. So it's all kind of arranged here. There is a demand, though. That's the thing. There's a huge demand that's coming through. So what you see here is you see that the actual use or the, you know, and they talk in terms of like the revenue coming in is on an exponential that's coming in here. But then there's a kind of a question about is this going to all go smoothly, and is there going to be kind of if somebody slams the brakes on? So in other words, if there's not enough money coming out of these guys to justify the hyperscalers, then the hyperscalers might slam on the brakes, and then then we'll see. Like, so there's a lot of kind of timing issues with the money. So it's probably going to be, when they talk about the AI bubble, they're talking about the glitches that are going to probably surround that. So just make some more commentaries. Right. So far, I guess it's about $1.6 trillion and counting. And then NVIDIA just announced, I guess, like last week or something, a fresh $500 billion in financing for the hyperscalers. So they're kind of like opening up. Yeah. And then we have IPOs. So the projection right now is Anthropic and OpenAI will do an initial public offering in the fall, or at least Anthropic has been talked about. So everybody's kind of interested in looking at their I guess it's called their S1 filings, because they have to do that publicly. And then so everybody wants to look and see what has the revenue been like, what's the quality of the revenue, et cetera. What are the expenses and exactly on what. But all the participants in this system have to ultimately have top line revenue. That means the money coming in has to exceed the expenses to generate a bottom line profit at a reasonable margin. So margin, of course, is like, well, how much, if you have just like very skimpy margin, then it doesn't make business is not worth doing. So they want to have a healthy margin. So that has to happen. So then the question is basically, there's a lot of complex findings around this, and there's a question about, can they build a moat? And the most serious question right now is, can Anthropic and OpenAI build a moat? Will they have persistent demand? I think they will. It looks like, because the people are finding this stuff useful. And then the question is that can they make a profit? And if they cannot make a profit, in the limit, that's trouble. You need to make a profit in business. So the hyperscalers, so the money right now, they're paying all the money to the hyperscalers to have the compute. So money is coming out. It's basically what investor money is going into Anthropic and OpenAI. Revenue is also coming in, and then the bulk of that money then is going to the hyperscalers to pay for the compute. So right now, I don't think they're running an operational profit. In fact, that's kind of a big question. Some people say they actually think that they are running an operational profit, but I think but okay. So that's the question. They need to get to a point where they're doing an operational profit. If the demand keeps on increasing, they'll have the revenue incoming, but what they might wind up doing, and if what the constraint in the system is there's not enough compute, what they can then do is turn around and say, well, we have to increase our rates. And a lot of people will squeal about that. They'll complain, but if there really is the demand there, then they can bring their rates up so they can make a profit on or there'll be a cut in what they can. And so all of the participants have a interest in keeping this thing functioning. Nobody wants to see the thing break down, at least not yet, among the people who are investing and supporting all this. So there's a lot of round tripping. There's a lot of financing to kind of keep things kind of like going. That's the most important thing. And so it's just kind of a matter of time to wait and see how it all kind of pans out. I'm sure there'll be there will be people who lose money, though. I mean, there will be money that gets incinerated. That's just that's kind of part of it. It's like when you go back to like earlier periods, how much money was put into the railroads and into the canals of the world that just poof got lost, a lot. But the thing is, ultimately, it got built. So that's kind of the reasoning behind all this, why there's some promise in that this is going to actually result in something, and won't be just a complete washout. But it'll be really hard. There'll be hard aspects to this. This is not going to be without bump. It's going to be action packed. So it's a horse race. And then, of course, we have the issue that what might happen if OpenAI and Anthropic really get pounded. Then what you'll see more deep-pocketed companies come in and take that model providing kind of business and run that on their. Or you'll see them acquire these guys. These guys will get acquired by deeper pockets. So maybe like Amazon will acquire Anthropic, maybe, or will Google. OpenAI, maybe Microsoft. I don't know. Yeah. In the middle part of this thing right here, in here, um, oops, sorry. In the middle, in this kind of right, this area in the middle here, in there the fur is really flying, which means it's a lot of there's a lot of fighting over agentic standards and platforms. Uh, there's a lot of token. There's like and there's the question of the SaaS apocalypse, whether that will actually happen. Will people vibe code some of these SaaS platforms? I tend to be skeptical of that myself, personally. I think that the SaaS platforms, if they stick to what they're really good at, will still be useful, and they're generating pretty good. I mean, they're not losing their customers so quickly, but there's a threat there. There's a fear that vibe coding will kind of just eclipse. Why have a special kind of CRM when you can just kind of build your own with vibe coding? That's kind of the argument there. So that's been a problem. Also, the middle, there's a lot of legacy companies that are really in trouble, like the consulting houses like McKinsey and these guys. Their business model is really shaken up. I mean, maybe some of the law firms. I mean, there's a whole bunch of legacy kind of information providing type businesses that are in that they it's kind of sink or swim for them. So it's a very dynamic and competitive landscape. There's lots of action. There's a lot of money flowing around. And just to tell you guys as students, there's a lot of opportunity, because this is where opportunity comes when there's a huge, if everything's kind of fixed and steady, then people who are entering into things younger, entrepreneurs and stuff, there's a lot of opportunity there because things are under change. And then, there's everybody has to kind of scramble to survive. So that's the way it goes. So there's risks, of course. There's bubble trouble, like the whole issue of like overinvestment. It's going to happen. I mean, there's going to be somebody who's going to be a bag holder here. Geopolitics, right? So I'm not sure if you guys have been paying attention, but I'm sure you have been paying attention. I don't mean to. But there's the issue of are we going to get a giganto energy shock like momentarily, like soon? It's possible, quite possible. Then there's the issue of the backlash, the revolt. There's monetary stability problems. So there's all these risks that are kind of circulating around this thing. So this is the times we live in. It's the curse of living in interesting times, as they say. So, right. So there's all that going on. So we don't know. Okay. So, but a question might be this though: is that where are we on? So these are kind of some famous curves here: the S curve and the hype curve. The S curve has to do with when you get a new technological result. Like for instance, when the Wright brothers took off at Kitty Hawk, it didn't take long from there until we had all these propeller planes. So they had a simple bicycle plane, and then just everybody thought, "My God, this is it." So then it just kind of kicks off this giant technological expansion, or it becomes right. I mean, and this is kind of, I guess, what some of the things people are saying as this thing happens. But you hit a diminishing return on this. So where are we on the LLM side? We're probably getting toward the end of the LLMs. Where are we on reasoning? Well, probably around here. Where are we on agents? We're probably here. So we've got three of them, maybe. Like that's how I tend to kind of want to look at it. Is I look at those kind of three kind of core capabilities. So again, LLMs, just the next token prediction or chat. Reasoning, where we're kind of putting this in a loop, doing, and then agents, where we're actually doing actions with these things. So so there's like, those are like, to me at least, those are the three main results being processed through the S curves at this point. And then of course there's the whole issue of the hype curve, where you have this kind of I mean, I think one of the things with AI that has been a bit of a criticism is that there were a lot of people who they were like in crypto, then they hopped over into like the metaverse, and then they hopped over into AI. So there's a lot of kind of like these kind of slick kind of like hypesters who kind of pop around, and I mean, I think they're kind of fun to listen to, but just in general, like you know, watch your wallet. I mean, don't. I mean, watch your wallet. It's like I think my general feeling is maybe it's a very old fashioned way of thinking of things, but I like to listen to people. I like to hear what they have to say, but I'm not going to pay for that. I would pay for something that's for real, like them actually building something, and then I would be very careful about, or physical product or whatever. So I mean, paying for advice. Okay, so what are some of what I would call the durable results of this? Things that I think we can pretty much say are results. The idea of using LLMs or reasoning, whatever, to produce a human editable content. So like drafts, images, videos, whatever. So you just like getting something out that you can then edit and make better. That's there's a big win in that. Although the one thing to keep in mind though is that there's quite a bit of a backlash against slop. So I think that like AI generated music, I'm a bit skeptical of. Like AI generated films. It's like, there's always the question of this, is that if you have a human that does something, you're probably going to have the highest quality. It's going to touch us the most because we're humans when it comes to kind of artistic expression. And in general, we probably prefer quality over quantity. I mean, would I rather watch one really, really profound and deep movie, or 10 kind of like just pot boilers? I mean, quality, right? Okay. So but in terms of like drafting out like a business report or something, then sure. I mean, it's like, or drafting out, there's a lot of things that it's kind of, or creating a thumbnail for a video or something. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of nice. Okay. Chatting to learn concepts or facts. Okay, so engaging with the chatbot and asking it questions. Yeah, this is really useful. Like, it's immediately obvious that this is useful. Now, you could say whether or not it was AI that did it or not, but recently I rebuilt the carburetor of my lawnmower. Okay, I was proud. It worked. Well, it worked. I bought a new lawnmower anyways, though, because then it didn't work after that. But I did actually rebuild it, and I got the thing turned over, and it was working. So the specific questions I was asking it about, like the lawnmower and kind of it doing analysis, it was really, really good. I mean, it helped me tremendously. It was very quick and very efficient. It gave me good feedback. Same as with like using this new accounting software I'm using. I ask questions to Gemini, and it's really, really, really helpful. I mean, it's like having like somebody there help, like, who really knows the software really well, describing it and explaining it to me. And I got speed up. So it's a result. I mean, I know that people might say that there's a lot of skeptics who still kind of cling to this as like, so one of the things I want to say is that some people, what they'll say is say, oh, all it's doing is next token prediction. Listen, if there's one thing, guys, that I want you to get out of this course, that's just LLMs. Okay. That's just LLMs before fine tuning, before reinforcement learning, before reasoning, before agents, right? An agent is a lot more than just doing next token prediction. I mean, it's like, okay, that might be, there's a next token predictor, which is like the oracle that it's calling upon, but how it actually, the harness it builds around that is much more than, oh, it's just next token prediction. It's not just next token prediction. It's also setting up the right training sets. It's like, now we can argue about whether or not this is real intelligence or not, but it's useful. It is definitely useful. I'm sorry. I mean, my own experience just tell me immediately that it's useful, and it's a durable result, because maybe, I'll need to fix my lawnmower in another 10 years, and it's going to be there to help me. So summary generation. Okay. So like generating TLDRs is good. Code assist is very good. Again, like I told you guys before, code assist. Okay. Remember, code assist is when you're still in charge of all your code, but you're using you're using a reasoning, it's a reasoning machine. Well, reasoning, using that to kind of, you could like say this code isn't doing what I really want. It's not working. Oh, what's wrong with this thing? Because it's trying to call out to APIs, and the code assistant will help you fix it. It'll say, oh, try this instead. And then it will kind of give you an explanation of what was going wrong with your API call. And then you paste that in, you test it, and you say, wow, it works. Okay, very good. That's code assist. Vibe coding is a little different. I'm more skeptical of vibe coding, because vibe coding is where you kind of lose connection to the code itself, and you just kind of controlling the whole thing through natural language. I think that you can probably get yourself in pretty serious trouble with vibe coding. Emerging results, though. Okay, longer form research of sufficient quality from reasoning models. Yeah, okay, longer form research reports. Uh, uh, but yeah, longer form research. But who's going to read it? That's the thing. This is like we have a different way of working these days. Long, okay, dialogue over SQL databases. Sure. Vibe coding of dashboards and mockups. Okay, that's pretty useful. Again, remember vibe coding. You can vibe code something, and then you can then take the code and then start working the code. So you can bring it under assist after you vibe code it in the first place. But yeah, this stuff works. I've used it. This is kind of an interesting story about this code breaking, hacking. There was a story, I guess, of some guy who he was drunk or something. He was like a student, and he had bitcoins, and he locked away his keys, and he didn't remember the password that he used. He just couldn't remember what the password, but it was like sitting on top of several bitcoins. It was like a fair bit of money that was sitting on top of. And the story, at least, I never verified this, but the story was that he couldn't remember what the hell what he used for the password. So what he did is he had an LLM just searching, or okay, he had a Gen AI machine, probably an agent, and it was an agent that was probably Claude Code, I'm not sure, that was basically he fed in all his journals, because he was a good journaler, all his journals, maybe like, he told him when this was, and then he said, I forgot what my password is, can you please try to find my password? And the thing went into a brute force, not quite brute force, it went into a loop where it was trying to guess based on what was going on. It's like, what would a good password be? And it found it. It actually found his password. So that's kind of a special little case where it's kind of impressive that this thing just kind of iterated. I'm not sure how long he ran it for, but he ran it for a long time until finally it broke the code. So that's pretty interesting. Emerging result also is this kind of issue of these mixed initiative dialogues where the LLM is the teacher and the human is a student. And this relates to a problem that you're going to have on recitation 4. So you guys can try to experiment with this and see if you can kind of get that to work. Okay. I want to say just a little bit about, like, again, when we talk about those SMEs. So, right, these are things that are there. These are emerging results, durable results, and emerging results. Now I want to talk a little bit about AI native or AI first organizations. So businesses that are built up around AI and humans also. So humans, actors are humans or agents, okay? And then we want them to work in harmony. And again, I'm talking about businesses that are doing stuff for real. And I don't need to be like kind of a snob about this, but I think a lot of businesses don't do stuff that I just don't like. It's just so kind of fluffy information product. Restaurant, like give me a meal, give me a new roof, give me a car, give me stuff. Give me something for real. I'm interested in businesses that are doing something for real, not selling advice or even software. That's kind of like funny to say as someone in computer science, but tangibles. I think the tangible businesses are ultimately the ones that they're the ones that I want to buy stuff from. Okay, sorry. They're tangible. I don't want to pee my money away on advice. Sorry. Stuff that's for real. Okay, so let's think about those kind of companies. We have humans and we have agents, and we have there are going to be critical parts of the process where we probably want to have the human do the judging. So, for instance, when that business just tries to decide, is this even a customer we want to try to sell to? Probably human price to say, yeah, that looks good. Okay, so you might have a lot of assistant support that gives a simple case, but the actual decision, maybe you want a human around that. Certainly, when you send bids to a prospective customer, you probably want a human to look that over because you have to stand by your bid, and you could lose a lot of money otherwise. When you actually make the orders of material, you can make mistakes. If you make mistakes here, if there's an order of magnitude mistake here, then that would be problematic. Final schedules and customer notifications. Yeah, these things, schedule acceptances, production closeouts, final invoicing, these kind of things, you probably want a human in the gate just because the consequences of an error are so high. So you need to have a human at the gate. But you could have agents supporting this. Now, again, remember always that a lot of times, actually, automations are much better than agents because they're just deterministic. So now you might vibe code them, which is good, but you got to build those in. You got to build in the automation. So the code itself, whatever ultimately runs on a day by day basis, is deterministic code. So you can get a long way with just automations without having to kind of put this kind of iffy type of probabilistic or kind of non-deterministic pieces into your code. Right, you're going to want to have systems of record, of course, and that means SQL databases and tools. Actors are making decisions or they're taking actions, etc. Okay, so here's kind of an interesting way of looking at some stuff. Now, as you're doing this, as they're kind of working in harmony, you could have it so that here's a task or here's the decision, an action or a decision. Are we going to have the human do it and then have the agent review the human? Are we going to have the agent do it and then have the human review the agent? Are we going to have pure agent or pure human? And so what you can do with this is you can basically evaluate this based on accuracy over cost. Okay, so the higher the accuracy and the lower the cost, the better it's doing. All right, so you could kind of systematically kind of set those things up. Now, of course, there's also the issue of the cost. There's risk also here. So when you talk about accuracy, you might have an extremely high, again, for some of these actions in here, the idea of doing it, of making an error can be so high, or the cost can be so high, you really need to really, well, you could say it can put a human on it, but they can even make mistakes, right? So yeah, I mean, probably some set of overlapping decisions, but or overlapping kind of looking over each other's shoulders to kind of try to validate that it's correct. Right. Generally, continuous incremental improvement is the way to go. Not just like one kind of like rapid kind of like rollout of the new AI tech. No, I mean, that doesn't. You need to kind of put it in slowly. And so this actually works. So this means that this is the whole idea of like forward deployed engineers that I guess that term got kind of popularized by Palantir. The idea of having people that are really technical, that are on there, that are really sitting at the business. Now that probably for a lot of businesses should be done in-house or with like a simple consultant. I think that a simple consultant who's focused on that. One of the problems with having companies that are kind of investor driven do this is that the growth is not. Consulting is a bad model for venture capital. They want to sell product, and a lot of the problems in the world, or in this world, happen because they're trying to put growth on top of a consulting business. And I'll talk a little bit about a special term that talks about that. Competitive advantage, of course, is to reduce the cost and improve the quality. So. But then I've said it before, there's quality over quantity. Sometimes quality is the most important thing that a company does, just a quality job so they have a good reputation. High quantity with low quality you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get in serious trouble. So the idea then is that, or one of the speculations is that companies or firms that adopt this AI native or AI first approach, if it does work, they're going to basically run circles around the more legacy companies in their area. And then that's just going to lead to, they're going to win. And then the older ones are going to not win. And so it's going to push things toward this AI native or AI first setups. That's kind of the argument, at least. Right. Okay. So now we have some dubious claims. And unfortunately, I don't have it. So I didn't have the animation here, so it rolls out. But anyways, let's just look at it here. So dubious claims. Okay, so directly replacing workers, like saying, looking at a role and saying, or a company selling thing, I'm going to replace your software engineer. I'm going to replace your lawyer. I'm going to replace your radiologist. Those kind of arguments, usually that doesn't work because there's a lot more involved. It's not. That's not. Generally speaking, that's not the way. What you do is you make people more effective in their position. And then, of course, it might mean that you hire less. So you basically go into some kind of phase of attrition. But I think that Jensen Huang had a kind of a good, accurate thing where he says, you won't lose your job to AI, not directly to AI. You will lose your job to a person using AI. Okay, so the idea there is that those who can adopt this technology will become more effective and more flexible in their roles, and then they'll be able to they'll be favored to kind of either get the job or keep the job. And then there'll be less people in the job, so there will be attrition. So that if people are looking for AI to kind of cut labor costs, that's how they'll get it. Now, again, hold off because we're going to talk about some criticisms of this whole thing in a second here. Okay, now I think that any talk of really anything, people saying, oh, it reaches the level of a toddler, an elementary schooler, a high schooler, a college student, a PhD, as if that's not how it works. Well, the reason why fundamentally that's not the way it works is because LLMs, LRMs, and agents are not human. I mean, to state the obvious, that they can't fill in the full role of somebody working in a position. There are things that if you have, like, for instance, like take a salesperson, right? A salesperson walking the floor at an auto dealership. Well, they're a human. People might prefer to, they might actually want to talk to that person. How are you going to replace that with a robot? Or are you just going to say, oh, we're not going to have sales anymore. We're going to have a fancy website. No, I mean, somebody's going to go in. They want to get the car shown to them, and they want a human being to describe that to them. And there's just, you can't really replace them. So are you going to replace it? I mean, it's just they're not human. Okay. So there's this kind of idea of like construct validity where there's a lot of like really kind of like weak arguments around this thing. So anytime I hear this thing of like, oh, we're going to reach a level of A, and then they name something that's like a human, like a living being, and they're saying that we're going to reach that. Oh, what you're going to do is you're going to create some benchmark that you think represents what that kind of person can do, and then this AI is going to do well in those benchmarks, and then you're going to say, therefore, we've reached the level of this. That is not. Again, there are aspects that you can't reach the level of it because, at least not yet, right? Okay, so but it's predictions of AGI, artificial general intelligence, or ASI. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of these, when people talk about this, I think it's just like kind of, it's meant to either rivet or intimidate the public. I mean, or it's to, it's just, there's a lot of games being played with this kind of talk. There's also the issue of some of the leading companies in the area. So Dario Amodeo, a lot of people say that, well, he is crying wolf about all this kind of stuff because he wants the government to get involved to do regulation so that he can get regulatory capture. So his big company can then be part of a process that basically vets or legitimate, that controls the release of things, and therefore, because he's an early player, he's going to then get he's going to capture by regulatory means, he's going to capture access to the market. Okay, so a lot of games like that it's like, this is big business. This is right. But let's talk a little bit about the superintelligence thing. So let's just get the definitions at least that the field uses. AGI is artificial general intelligence, right? Okay, so these are the different levels as kind of stipulated. And it has to do with maybe just like a single skill. So this I might kind of go with, but it's not really a single skill. It's like kind of like, now, I mean, I'm skeptical of it, like reaching an expert, what can it do more than like, is it competent? Can it reach the level of 50th percentile of a skilled adult? And the answer is that, I mean, no, because an adult in the real social interaction of things is that I don't care how good the LLM, I don't care how smart it is. I'm not going to go like, if it's a friendly AI, I'm not going to like say, oh, hey, let's go out and like maybe after this conference, let's go out, maybe have a couple beers at the pub, and like, oh, and I listen to them. I meet a new person. Can an AI do that? No, I'm not. Sorry, I don't buy it. So, and is that part of business, is to like, meet people and to like, yeah, it is. It is. So I don't think so. Right, whatever. But we see this is the kind of how it gets set up. So why is it that I don't really care to talk to a puppet and over a beer? Why is that? Because I'm a human myself, and I have a bias toward interacting and talking to humans. The computer is like, it's a puppet. I mean, it's like, no, I don't, sorry, I don't buy it. Does the puppet have intentionality? Does it do, like, I grant another human being intentionality. That is that something that they have a soul or something. Something springs to get spring, like something, they have a complex, God only knows, but they want stuff, and I can, like, they're human. I mean, it's like, right. Okay. Self-awareness and consciousness, it says it does, maybe, or it, like, kind of appears, but, I don't grant it self-awareness or consciousness. It doesn't. These are mysteries. I just, until, I just don't see myself falling for it. It's a nice puppet, though. Artificial superintelligence. Of course, we've heard about all this stuff about the singularity, about recursive self-improvement. And this is interesting. I think it's kind of interesting. I didn't read the book, but I listened to some interviews of this Yudkowsky. I mean, he kind of, like, reminds. I used to play D&D a lot when I was a kid, and it kind of reminds me of having, like, I had a dungeon master Yudkowsky's a lot like a dungeon master I used to have, and so it kind of brings back the memories. But it's fun, though. I don't know. Now he says it's not fun if the thing actually, we do build it and then it gets, self-awareness, and then it decides that humans are just expendable, etc. Right. Okay. So these are all things. Now the question, of course, is that since I don't, okay. So what are some further technological, like, avenues that potentially could lead us more toward this, or more toward, like, deeper AI? So there's this idea of, like, alternative deep learning methods. So LeCun, his world models, which is something we didn't cover in the course. I think maybe in next year's course we'll cover it as it kind of matures. LSTM, so recurrent neural networks, might be more. That might be an architecture that gets more attention. Causal reasoning is always a kind of interesting thing. Causal reasoning will come up when you're trying to build a teacher agent. So causation is a tricky thing, but probability respects causation. There's the classic AI stuff about reasoning about the goals, plans, and actions. So this kind of stuff, like with this koala, these language agents, that stuff is still kind of germinating, kind of. I think this whole idea of, like, regressing on goals is something that is kind of interesting. So, and again, remember, this is not anybody who says, "Oh, it's just next token prediction." No, it's not just next token prediction. There's a whole kind of cluster of technologies around this. So, one thing that's kind of particularly interesting to me, just kind of from a semantic point of view, is this first order probability logics. So, first order logic is something that has, like, things and their relationships. Probability is more propositional, based on the propositional logic. So it's always been a kind of a question of it: are we ever going to get these first order probability logics? It's tough because we have infinite models. So, but you can maybe with sampling kind of get toward that. So I think probability logics is something maybe that this is kind of closer to what is the actual truth of things, and that's higher order logics is involved with that. There's still some major things around kind of like the minimalist programming, like linguistics, like the language organ, to put it in Chomskyan terms. So that's these are things that I'm interested in, just to kind of look at and to see kind of where they're going. But then I say, well, let's not kid ourselves. The LLMs and LRMs and agents are the bomb. So that's the focus. One thing with agents that we didn't talk about was, like, you could say that, like, I think that Koala had, like, one big agent doing all these complicated things. There's another way of looking at that is to break it into lots of small agents and have them kind of compose. So if you're interested, like, Minsky's Society of Mind kind of develops that idea. But anyways, so this is we are in this technological revolution. So it's quite interesting. Who do you want to listen to? Do you want to listen to me? And then I laugh at that. I'm broad, at least. I mean, I don't know. I'm taking a lot of messages. There's the Booster Brothers. So these are some of the guys. They're kind of interesting to listen on YouTube. They tend to kind of be following the latest announcements, and they kind of summarize it. And they're doing it with they're boosting it, so they're very positive. They're kind of awing at what kind of gets developed. We have, like, the investors or the oligarchs. So All In podcast, I listen to them. They're interesting. They represent kind of the oligarchs And then Bloomberg, of course, invested in is Elon is an oligarch. Jensen is an oligarch. Although Jensen actually is actually a pretty. I respect Jensen in terms of his attitude about this thing. He's very like. I mean, he's cooler in his politics, in my opinion, than the others. The skeptics or the critics. So these guys are really interesting listeners. So Ed Zitron has been really kind of pounding the drum on like what's the status of the financing of all this. He's also a little bit on the side of thinking that there's not much there in terms of what it can offer. I am now disagreeing with him a bit on that. This pile driver paper, which a link to, is very good. Has to do with this again. It has to do with like these people who like the observation of this pile driver paper was that like one transferable skills was people kind of like the ability to kind of like hype, right? So yeah, going from crypto to meta to metaverse to AI, and these people who play the politics game in organizations, and this kind of groupthink that kind of goes around it. So there was a lot of yeah. I mean, there's the politics, the water cooler politics, and the rollout of AI is I mean, it's like it's led to some pretty silly and kind of the people the con okay, the AI con by Hanna and Bender. This is interesting. This has to do with that stochastic parrot critique. Again, I'm getting a little bit more skeptical of that. But I think what's really good is this Cory Doctorow's enshittification and the reverse centaur. So the enshittification has to do with, and I think Zitron also talks about this issue of too much growth. I mean, the fact that it's all these investors wanting to compound their growth. And the trajectory of a lot of offerings is at first they're good, like a Facebook. It's like at first it's kind of good, you have all your friends, but then they start, and then they bring in their advertisements, and then they start serving advertisers over the customer. So it's just kind of getting shittier and shittier. And then at the end, they just even don't do well for the advertisers, and they just try to turn it into like a money extraction machine. And then, of course, it collapses. Ultimately, it collapses under the weight of that enshittification process. So the idea that Google actually is kind of in trouble because like they're in my opinion, because Google Ads is kind of dying now because it's not all there are bots out there. So it's kind of like, well, who wants to pay for who wants to pay for advertising to bots? So that's the concept of enshittification. It's happening in a lot of industries. It happens in autos, for instance, that just things are getting more like subscriptions and like just like they're really, I mean, they really have a lot of nerve to kind of like try to push things and try to extract money like that. But enshittification is a product of the investment, the fact that they need to have growth. Because of the investment capital that came in, it wants to grow. It can't be happy. Like an owner-operated firm could just kind of like be happy to make a reasonable profit year after year and not have profit growth. They don't need it. They just need to stay a viable company. But anything taking investment capital demands growth. You cannot, if you're not having year-over-year growth, then the investors are all bailing on you. It's like you get a lot of pressure just to grow, and then you wind up cheating your customer and cheating your you cheat in the case of of a lot of these companies. They cheat the user, and then they cheat the customer, like the ad person, and then or the person who's buying advertisement, and then it just becomes less and less good. The reverse centaur has to do with two opposite ways of looking or having or dealing with this technology. One, a centaur, which is kind of what you want, the person's head on the animal body and the big strong horse doing stuff. So you would like to have yourself in the center and have a lot of AI technology kind of that you're kind of launching and having do stuff around you, and you're getting a lot more efficiency. You're moving a lot quicker. That's very nice. But if you're like somebody like an Amazon driver who the computer is telling them where to go, and they have to pee in a bottle because they're just being kind of run ragged by a very demanding algorithm that wants to kind of really kind of optimize them as a human, that's a reverse centaur, and that's exploitative. And you don't, that's not a good place to be. But it's AI running it, right? It's AI kind of doing that. Who else to listen to? The coders. I think Primogen and Internet of Bugs. Those are two guys I listen to. I also listen to a lot of the people who are using other like practitioners. The academics, yeah, there's the them going. The actual innovators, these are some names. I just kind of like quickly put this together of good names. You should probably know all these names and what they've done. So look them up. Okay. Right. So who to listen to, and then who's this over here? This is Diogenes, our friend Diogenes from Recitation 3. Right. So why is he holding a lantern? Because he's looking for an honest person, and he can't find any. Okay. So in other words, everybody has their book. Everybody has they have a slant to why they're saying what they're saying. So now some people might be more truth seeking than others. Some people might want to be selling you something. So you got to be careful who you listen to. But ultimately, everybody's biased in one way or another because we don't know where this thing is going. So it's kind of like the, even if you kind of put it in very honest terms, it's like the parable of the elephant. So what is the parable of the elephant? The 3 blind men and the elephant. Well, the parable is that you have a big elephant and you have 3 blind men, and one is grabbing on the trunk of the elephant saying, it's a snake, declaring it's a snake. The other one is grabbing on the elephant's ear saying it's a tree, because it's like kind of like, like a fan of a tree or something. And then the third blind man has got his arms wrapped around the trunk, the leg of the elephant saying it's a tree. Well, he says it's a tree. Anyways, you get the idea. The point is that they all have limited sight, and they all have a little bit of what they're touching in this huge phenomena, and they're all declaring it's this, right? But it's no, it's an elephant. It's bigger than each of their little pieces of it. So that's something to keep in mind. Is that parable, I think, fits. Okay, so what's going to happen then? So let's just try to talk a little bit about some possible outcomes. Okay, so these are like I'm going to fill in this matrix here. So at the bottom here we have that AI ultimately is limited. We don't get AGI. We get kind of like, it might get a little bit better at what it does, but it's not that impressive ultimately. And then at the top axis here we have a dystopian outcome or utopian. So kind of what would really kind of be a bad outcome, not so fun, versus what kind of is like an ideal kind of outcome for it. Okay, so AI winds up not really being that big of a deal. It's just like, okay, it's a nice little kind of word calculator. It can do these kind of things, but ultimately it doesn't really amount to that much. Okay, well, humans in dystopian world, humans basically say this is just crap AI and we don't trust it. It's just a bunch of slop. And this relates also to dead internet theory. So the idea behind that is that who wants to go out? I mean, who wants to go out to the internet if it's just a bunch of bots? It's just like, okay, maybe we just all like, no, we don't want to. We don't have. It's like, well, it's like, who cares? And the quality of everything really just kind of suffers. Everything is just becoming crappier and crappier. And then there's more and more scamming. It's just, everything just sucks. Okay. And then of course, that's followed by some kind of societal collapse then of people. So that's not so good, but that's like kind of really weak AI, no AGI, just kind of like same old, and it's just kind of like everything is like stinks. All right, so utopian. What if we have limited AI, but what's a better outcome? Well, technology products are just less ambitious, but they are very stable and secure with real humans in control. So it's like we really get good technology that's kind of predictable, does what it's supposed to do. Society and culture we find a way to get some kind of reasonable social contract so people are reasonably happy. And then we all like, for kind of a biblical concept of everybody gets their vine and fig tree. So everybody gets their reasonable life, So we have like that kind of this is like kind of the hope. Now we have AGI. We have AI really working well. But the dystopian, that is, we get this oligarchic abuse of power. So those who own this whole this machinery, they really abuse it, and they basically, then there winds up being lots of social problems, of course. Then it becomes violent. So basically this is dystopian, of course, is we have like attacks on the data centers. We have the whole like bag of horrors that come along with this kind of strife. war. And then maybe even worse is the oligarchs backed by robot armies attempt the dust off, which basically means that they try to there's they try to just kill all the humans except for their elites. So I'm not, this is kind of really bad science fiction, but yeah, I mean it's just like they just say they call all of us useless eaters, and since they own everything, they can decide who's valuable, who isn't, and then they send off the robot armies. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that it could be really bad. I mean, it's like, I don't know, like the AI will probably be more shared than it just would be. Golly, I mean, we don't want this to happen. So eventually, what you get though is you'll get like a Skynet Matrix kind of thing, or AI. This film it's very good. The Spielberg film from 2000, AI was pretty interesting. In that you did get this kind of I recommend that film actually. It's kind of this is all in the province of science fiction, bad science fiction, or good science fiction, but it's kind of like we don't want this to happen. Okay, let's say AI comes along, and let's look at it a little bit more positive and utopian. All right, so we do get an age of abundance. So we get a dramatic increase in productivity, innovation, and sustainability. So we start managing the world right. We get from science fiction what's called the nanoforge, and we have space exploration. We aim toward immortality because we can solve health. And of course, the rewards are broadly shared. So if AI is really going, we are going to need some kind of UBI if we're going to, and then we might even have like, central planning cooperatives. So like, I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, it's kind of socialistic, but the idea then is that everybody has to like, you have a central planner, you have a computer that kind of tells you what, to kind of like, here, you got to lug this bag of rice or do this or, do that, some little cooperative thing. And then you get your, you get your big things, your housing, your health, your education, and your food all are ridiculously low priced. Okay. So everybody can kind of get along with that. You can still have some kind of like status economy if you want, but the basics is that can get taken care of just kind of almost automatically. So yeah, we need antitrust. We need a mixed economy. So that's kind of the idea behind the mixed economy. Like the masses own their own means of production. We can have barter. We can have maybe even Bitcoin stuff, Age of Aquarius stuff, and the haughty ones. So I mean the people who own stuff right now are going to have to like. The haughty people who own stuff and kind of like try to like bark out orders to everybody underneath them. Those people, of course, I mean, they are going to have to give up their power to let this happen. So they're going to have to be humble. So I'll just maybe leave it with a Jimi Hendrix quote. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. So yeah, the haughty ones are going to have to I mean, they're gonna. It's for this to happen for the utopian side. Elon Musk can talk about UBI, can talk about not needing, but at one point they're going to have to pull the parachute cord and start UBI. I'm not sure when that is, but probably if AGI comes along, they're going to need to do it. Okay. So, in my opinion, this is all my opinion. Everybody can have their own opinion, but I just want to kind of cover the bases here. Possible futures. Okay, so. Let's just quickly do this. Here, if we say basically we have three, I wanted to kind of do this kind of as a probabilistic distribution thing. We have AI proceeds at exponential, linear, or decaying rates. Okay, decaying because you'll see in a second why AI could go into decaying rates. The economy grows at hypernormal or depression rates. The Gini, which is it should be wealth inequality. Because remember, income doesn't mean anything. Because the real truly wealthy don't take an income. it's wealth. Does the wealth is it decreasing? So in other words, is more sharing of the wealth? Is it static or is it increasing? Are we getting even more concentration of wealth? Geopolitical, do we have stability, upheaval, or cataclysm? Cataclysm, that means that something like nuclear war. Nuclear war is cataclysm. And that, of course, if you're saying, well, how could AI proceed at decaying rates? Well, a thermonuclear exchange will do it. It will make it so AI is going to go into reverse. Okay? Ecological, we can have balanced disturbance or collapse. And collapse would be something kind of like, what if we lost all the fishes in the sea, or we lost like major sections of the food chain? They just drop out, they die. Okay, that's ecological collapse. Again, no picnic. Okay, well, these are the possibilities, and if you look at it, that means 3 to the 5 possible worlds. So we calculate initial distribution assuming priors and independence, and then we have rules that dictate the amount of probability mass that shifts from cases that falsify the rule to cases that verify the rule. Okay, so there's I won't get into that, but it's kind of a simple kind of probabilistic reasoning thing. Left-hand sides are conjuncts. The right-hand side are disjuncts of conditions. Okay. What does this say? Order of application matters, and they're able to simulate feedback loops. Okay, so what are we going to have? Here are the rules that I can speculate. If AI is exponential, then the economy is going to go hyper. Okay. If the ecology collapses, then the economy is going to go into a depression. If the Gini is increasing and the economy is in a depression, then we're going to get either we're going to get geopolitical upheaval or cataclysm. If the Gini is increasing, the economy is normal, then we're going to get geopolitical upheaval or cataclysm. These are the strengths of these rules. How much of the distribution do they shift? Cataclysm means depression. Cataclysm means AI decay. Okay. Cataclysm means Gini decrease. That is one benefit of, I guess, of a cataclysm, is that everybody's in the same boat. There's no longer wealth inequality when everything gets blown up. Okay. And we actually have that. So let's see. Do I have this? No, I don't. Okay. So I'll just leave this. There's some code here that I'll post. I'll just put the code if you're interested inside the recitation. But I think what it just shows that some of the interventions we can do, if we can get that generally speaking, if we can get things like putting some effort into kind of maintaining the ecology, try to dampen down the geopolitical instability, try to reduce the wealth inequality, that you'll see that the chances of a better outcome based on this probability model here, simply this probability model, it gets better. So, but you're free just to kind of like, this is again my version of maybe how this could be analyzed. You're free to entertain your own. So, okay, guys. Well, that was that. It's been fun, and yeah. So I'll see you guys. I will release the take home exam later today. And I'll see you guys at recitation next week. Okay? All right, bye-bye.